In this video, I'm going to show you the process of removing a mountain bike fork and installing a new one. Going from this older Rockshox Revelation to a new Pike, so pretty nice upgrade. So before you can remove the fork, you've got to, of course, take off the wheel. I've just got it stood up there in a bike stand. You're going to have to remove the brake caliper and undo your hoses, however it may be attached. And then that way everything can slide out the bottom without being interfered with. As you can see, I've got the old fork removed from the bike. Again, it's just the top cap bolt and the two pinch bolts on the stem. And what I recommend before you undo any of those bolts is while the fork is still in the bike, take a string or a little rope or something, tie it under the crown of the fork and then up over the top tube of the bike, just so that when you loosen up those bolts, nothing can fall out unexpectedly, because that could damage your parts. So that way it can only come down an inch or two. And that way you can start slowly removing your headset and spacers and stem and all that stuff and get it organized how you want it. And for your handlebars, you can just tie them anywhere or let them dangle, doesn't matter. You can see here I've got the headset laid out, top cap and the spacer I had on top of the stem. 3 spacers below the stem. This is the very top cap of the headset, little shim spacer thing. This is the top bearing race, the top cartridge bearing, the lower cartridge bearing, and the crown race off of the old fork. And all of this will get put onto the new fork after I clean everything. There's some old grease and gunk in there. So it's a good time to get that stuff clean so everything performs as good as possible. Okay, now that everything is cleaned, what you need to do to install your new fork is assemble everything of your headset as it would be in the final assembly. Just no need to put grease on it though. Put your crown race on the steer tube, put your bearings on, and install the fork into your bike. Maybe helpful to have someone help you, or again, tie it up with a string. Put the top bearings on, all the compression rings, everything like that, the top cap, or the dust cap, excuse me. Put your spacers on, put your stem on, put everything on as it will be. And you can see I've got 2 marks. So those are 5mm apart because I run a 5mm spacer on top of the stem, just to be sure that the stem gets a good grab all the way on its surface. And so I put one on top of the 5mm stem spacer and one below it. So I've got a 5mm gap there, and I want to cut pretty much right in the middle of the two. And what that will do is it'll leave enough space for everything to preload together once the top cap bolt is installed. So now it's time for me to cut this steer tube on this fork. So I've now got the fork held in the vise with this little jig I made. I turned this on my lathe, so this hole that the steer tube is going through is concentric to this face. I double checked it, I turned it precisely, and so this is going to help me to make a straight cut, and you should always use something to do this. Park Tool makes one to help guide your saw. I've seen some people put a hose clamp on the steer tube, just something that helps guide you to make a straight cut. And you can see how I've positioned it. You can just barely see that lower scribe mark in that gap there, and then the upper scribe mark, of course, to the right. So you can see I'll cut a little bit below the upper scribe mark to allow for some space for the headset to have preload once I install the star nut and tighten everything down. So now I'm going to cut with the saw flush to this surface right here. That'll get me a nice clean cut. Then everything needs to be gently filed smooth. As you can see, I've now cut the steer tube. This is the original cut. This is the offcut. Already very straight with the guide, but it also helps me to file it incredibly straight. You can see it's very straight, nice, good quality cut. I've taken a small file and just gone around the inside to make a small chamfer, so the entire inside of it is very smooth, no burrs or anything like that, and that's what you need to install the star nut. I'm going to install the star nut while it's sitting here because it's held nicely, and that gets pushed into the top. Star nut is now installed, filed the edges, everything's nice. It's now time to do the final assembly, and everything gets some grease, and put it all back together. And then all that's left is mount the brake rotor and the front wheel. We're good to go. Alright, in the time since the last video, I've gone ahead and installed the fork completely. It's the exact same as when you remove it, it's just opposite, of course. Remember, the crown race goes on first, and then put your bearing on, and then that slides up into the fork. And every interface where there's metal on metal, you want to put a little bit of grease on there, with a little brush or something, and that slides up. Put your top bearing in, then the compression ring or race, whatever you want to call that piece, and you may have some shims or spacers or something. So in my case, there was one little thin piece went down. Then the top dust cap, spacer, stem, and maybe you want one spacer on top like I run, and then you put your top cap on, tighten it up correctly, do up your pinch bolts, and you're good to go. And of course, when you want to make sure that your headset's got the correct preload, hold your front brake, and then hold these areas on your bike with one hand, like that, or with your fingers. Just rock the bike back and forth, make sure you don't feel any play. And after that, set up your air pressure, your compression, your rebound, all how you like it, and go try it out. And I went ahead and installed the mudguard too, help protect the stanchions from dust, rocks, etc. So yeah, that's the install of a new Rockshox Pike. And of course you want to not forget to attach your caliper. Alright, I've taken this fork on one ride, obviously on the bike. Short ride, probably a couple miles. So far it feels really great. Fork is nice and supple at the start of the stroke, and then it stays plush through its travel, it feels like. Didn't use all the travel, I didn't hit any jumps or anything like that. It was just a fairly average trail ride. Again, I was going from older Rockshox Revelation. I think this is the RC3 model. Yeah, you can see right here, RC3 29140 Solo Air. This fork was good, but left something to be desired. This fork definitely feels better, feels really good. I don't have any volume tokens in it right now, and I like the way it feels. I may mess with that, but we'll see. So this older fork I had on it was 32 millimeter stanchions, and this new Pike is 35, and the new Revelations are also 35 millimeter stanchions. Definitely you can tell the difference in the stiffness, both torsionally, which is this way, sort of in the steering axis, and forward, fore and aft. I definitely noticed with the Revelation, it would be pretty flexy. If I saw myself in a video on a jump or something, it'd be pretty flexy. So I think this fork feels really good. Currently running 75 PSI, 16 clicks of rebound damping from fully open, and left the compression open for now. Probably I'll mess with that and see how I like it. Yeah, fork feels really good. Overall, I'd say it's great. It is boost spacing, so if you're looking for that, that's good. My previous fork is non-boost, so I used the Problem Solver's boost adapter, and it just comes with the little spacers here, spacer on the other side, and a little spacer for your disc brake. Works perfectly. And this fork is torque cap compatible, so it's got that nice wide dropout. Yeah, so overall I'd say this is a great fork. Going from the Revelation RC3 to this Pike Select, I'd say it's a great upgrade. Feels really good, and I'd recommend it.